Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldron. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, January 17th, 2018. That's an easy date to screw up with the 17 in there, built in. We are on 2-hour delay here at Kagro in the Morning World Headquarters. That won't affect most of the show, but I'm sure we'll interrupt this at some point as I send the kids off to school or give them the reminder that it's time for them to head off to school. 2 hours late because of, I would say approximately half an inch of snow. We are not as ill prepared in this school district for snow as you might think, but they love to give days off and they love to give delays. We build an awful lot of them into our school schedule, and as I understand it, school board actually, I think they're doing a fairly good job. The school board actually builds in extra time each day. The kids spend longer in school each day in order to build a reserve for just such an occasion. And I guess if you took out a spreadsheet, you might find that it actually saves money in, probably in liability insurance for having the buses running in the middle of all this snow where it is slippery and whatnot. And why bother with risking it at 8 a.m. when you could risk it later at 10 a.m. when some of the solar plowing has taken place. Greg knows all about that. I bet they don't cancel school up there the way they do here, but it's not a bad system, really. Build it in there. Maybe it's even uniquely, we're not quite southern. We're certainly not deep south, but it's a unique approach to a climate that brings us pretty regular snow and cold temperatures, but doesn't warrant keeping on hand the kind of plowing equipment and salt and etc. that is necessary further north, but it's not like you can abandon the job either, as they did down in South Carolina, as I recently found out, as many of you may have seen on the news. I think they got, I don't know how much snow they got down in the Charleston area, but they don't prepare for snow at all. They very, very rarely get it. When they do, it's only an inch or so, and it melts the next day. But in combination with the deep freeze that sent most of the eastern seaboard into record low temperatures for several days on end. Apparently the Charleston airport was closed for 5 days by not a whole lot of snow, to be honest. I don't know what the measurement was, but, you could look it up and then you could tell me and then I could tell the rest of you. That's kind of the way it works on the show. I'm doing it single-handedly at the moment. Of course, we'll be having Greg Dworkin join us shortly. Maybe he knows how much snow they got in Charleston. But apparently, by the way, Myrtle Beach Airport, it turns out, has heated runways. Very nice. Good idea. That got them open again one day after the snow. Charleston closed for 5 days. Mind you, by the way, they just lured Boeing over there to build a factory. And so the reality now is they've built a factory someplace that the winter months could make it impossible for them to deliver their product for days at a time if there's an inch or two of snow. I don't think that they really factored that in. And there are some due diligence people who are probably getting their butts kicked over at Boeing right now, and they probably ought to be doing that. So they have no equipment whatsoever. They just didn't buy plows. They could buy shovels and I guess send the National Guard to shovel the place, but also just nobody sells shovels apparently in South Carolina either. I've just been updated on that, so it's on my mind. Daily Co's Radio is live now. That's what you're hearing. These stories about Charleston and what's going on in my household. And let's see. Bill knows it's live. It's what he tells us about in his morning tweet. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman. Joined today by Dem from Connecticut. That's how Greg Dworkin tweets. You can find him there. And Joan McCarter, of course. We're all 6'4", he reports quite accurately. I am a proud member of the girther movement, apparently. I guess Chris Hayes thought he invented the girther thing. Every once in a while you come up with something really clever, but you can't believe that no one else has said it before. And someone had said it before. Although in a slightly different context. People have been referring to girthers with respect to Donald Trump since the primary campaign debates when he was talking about his hands and there's no problem down there, believe me. Yeah, people have been talking about a slightly different kind of girth, but I guess yesterday was the press conference by Dr. Ronnie Jackson. Is it Jackson? Is that right? It makes it sound like he's a member of the Jackson 5. Do I have that right? I don't know. Anyway, to me, I reconsider, it's based on nothing. He's a consummate professional, I'm sure. But Dr. Ronnie, makes me say, I don't know if that guy's licensed. I don't know if I want him injecting me with anything. Sounds like maybe someone you might go to see for illegal steroids as a professional baseball player. Really, Dr. Ronnie? Oh, that Grenada Medical School that we had to, bail out with an invasion. I remember that place. Or Hollywood Upstairs Medical College, for a Simpsons reference, if you need. I have my doubts. It all started, of course, several months ago when we heard first from his personal physician about his height and weight during the campaign, and we all had our doubts. And I think at that point, they reported the exact same height and weight combination. Height, that would make sense, if it were true. 6'3" and 239 pounds. Miraculously, exactly the maximum allowable reportable weight before having to declare a 6'3" adult male in the obese category, which is not terrible, and it's not, it's not good, but it's not bad, and a fair number. I mean, every once in a while you turn on the news and they tell you something like 60% of Americans are obese, and it's true, can't hide from it, but obese it's a very loaded term. It's extremely loaded. It's way too loaded, and not morbidly loaded. That's different. But it's a little too loaded. You could stand to lose a few loads, I guess, is what we're saying. And, it would be a normal person would say, I'm overweight. That's bad. Okay. Well, let's be honest about it. But Donald Trump can't have that. He's a Greek god. So they manipulated things, I believe. Because I'll put it this way. I don't know whether he's 239 or not. That I couldn't tell you. It doesn't look like it. I make his weight to be, 30 plus pounds more than that at a minimum. But I don't know what his body composition really is. But the 6'3" thing gives me a problem. One, not least because his driver's license issued in 2012 says 6'2". Now, people counter and say driver's license height and weight is self-reported. They don't check that. Everyone knows that. No one's ever been measured or weighed at the DMV that I'm aware of. Not in my state, not in any state I've ever lived in. It's maybe it's wrong. It could be. But I don't know anybody who goes to the DMV and says, I'm 6'3", but I'm embarrassed by that. I'm going to tell him I'm 6'2". Not a guy like Trump. Certainly. A guy like Trump would be like, if he's 6'3", he'd tell him he's 6'5", 6'6", 8 feet tall. I'm in the NBA, is basically what he would be doing. But no, he told him 6'2". Why? If he's 6'3", or, some people said, well, gee whiz, what happens to people when they get to be about 70 years old? Very frequently out there in America, people grow an inch. It happens. It's very common. Of course, what happens is the opposite, but, I don't know what he tells people. Meanwhile, there's plenty of photos out there of him claiming, well, he's not claiming in the photo to be 6'3", but he's claiming now to be 6'3". I see here a picture this morning of him standing at those very same Republican debates with all the idiots lined up in a row. What an opportunity. He's standing next to Jeb Bush, who also claims to be 6'3", and may very well be 6'3". But if that's the case, then Donald Trump isn't 6'3". I can tell you with some authority. People, I showed the picture around. Some people say, well, he's slouching. He is. But there's no spine-straightening device you can come up with that's going to get him to be the same height as Jeb Bush in this photo. I also had some photos that circulated with him having a conversation with 5'9" Serena Williams, pretty much looking at each other eye to eye. I believe she was wearing heels, but in order for him to be 6'3", she'd have to be wearing like 6-7 inch heels to be up that high. I'm not saying he's definitely not. I don't know, but I think if you took a tape measure, you would find out. The guy's 6'1". I think he's 6'1", and he told DMV 6'2". That's much more the Donald Trump MO than anything else. I'm 6'1", I'm almost 6'2". I'll tell him 6'2". And then 6'2" became, if I say I'm 6'2" and I'm 260, I'm morbidly obese. But if I'm 6'3", I can cut off a little bit of the weight, a little bit too, and say 239, and nobody's going to call me on that necessarily, and I can avoid the obese label. I think that's how they came to this. Journalists are skeptical, and they're actually scoffing and rolling their eyes and saying, look at these people, I can't believe they're into conspiracy theories, they're wasting their time with this stuff. We wasted 15 minutes on it. I had a good time with it. It's funny to look at. It's funny that he's that vain. I'm sure the doctor knows how much he really weighs and how tall he is, because if he ever has to give him a prescription, he's going to want to know that. And there's no reason to release anything but what the president says. Go ahead and release. It's his medical information. I just think he's a gigantic liar, and this was a good opportunity to illustrate just how ridiculous a lie it is. I can't believe that the members of the press are so incredulous about it when they keep writing down that he's having meetings and making phone calls in golf attire. But I don't know. I can't answer for them. I could continue to answer for Greg Dworkin. It's working pretty good so far, but I'll let him talk instead. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. It's going great. Keep going.
Okay. All right. How tall are you?
I'm tall enough so that every time I take a step, I can just reach the ground.
That's the important part.
It's good enough.
Right. And gravity
Works
helps
for me.
with that. So
Works for me.
Excellent. I was just telling everybody, in addition to Donald Trump being a big obese liar. I mean, I think he really just is. I'm just using medical terms here and nothing more.
Yeah.
But
that's
also
very controversial in D.C. because some people say he's not obese. He's just a big liar.
Yes. He's a big boned liar. That's all.
Well, a couple observations about that.
All right.
In terms of your introduction. First of all, Jed Purdy, who on his Twitter feed identifies himself
has a Purdy
associated with Duke Law, points out the president's clean bill of cognitive health, if true, striking as a reminder a disastrous political event generally does not get corrected by applying professional expertise, diagnosis, adjudication, etc., but by politics itself, which is scarier and harder and takes longer. And there's plenty of politics, including a huge, or dare I say it, huge Wisconsin special election win last night for the Democrats. We'll get to that.
Okay.
In the meantime, I wanted to make a couple observations about the medical thing.
All right. That's appropriate.
I had to cough, so I hit the mute button. I hope I hit the right one, because on Monday I kept nuking Hawaii because hitting the wrong button. I hope we fix that. So first of all, Zachary Berger is a medical physician, and he has a nice tweet thread about all of this, where he starts in and says, today we had the president's medical theater, curio sencomer of the worse than usual of our healthcare system. That's House of Curios.
Oh.
A microcosm. Let's break it down that basically when he goes through his whole exam here, he points out that what this really is prioritization, and this happens to a lot of adults, about cardiac exam.
Yes.
It's hard to find. And it uses a lot of terminology which is completely and totally meaningless. Now, I'm a pediatrician. I'm no expert in adult health. But I can tell you from my own expertise that telling somebody in so many words that, you're in great shape, you have the heart of a 40-year-old, even though you're 70,
in a jar,
and that you're going to live another 55 years is ridiculous because you can't know that.
Yes, that was a weird part.
You could do is you could put statistics, height, weight, blood pressure, cholesterol, into a Framingham study predictive screen, and then what you'd get is in the next 10 years, what's your chance of actually having a heart attack and dying?
Well, statistics
and I did this for myself. I can throw my own numbers in there. I got a 6.6% chance of having an event in the next 10 years. What's Trump's? We don't know, but you could do that.
I mean,
that kind of thing makes sense. But telling somebody he has a young heart, or he's in great shape, or even worse, which is what the doc did in this particular case, telling the world that he had great genes. I mean, that's basically just meant to butter up your client. Now, I appreciate the fact that he's a complete and total thorough professional. I have no issues whatsoever with his credentials. And he's in a tough spot because he's got a client, and privacy is allowed, and yet, the public wants to know stuff. And basically, Trump is in okay health. That's basically what he's trying to tell the public, and that's okay as far as it goes. What did he do? He did a really thorough cardiac exam, a relatively fast other exam, put it all together and said, you're fantastic, because cardiac rules. Cardiac is like what everybody does and focuses on. Because at that age,
you may even be a cardiologist.
Everybody kind of understands this, but I just want to put this in perspective. So did he look at everything else outside of the heart? Not so much. Everything else was a screen.
Okay.
Right? Did a screen for mental health, which is called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, sometimes abbreviated MOCA, M-O-C-A. I actually sent it to you so you can take a quick look to give you an idea of what it looks like.
Okay. I'd like to share that with people. I saw it tweeted around. I don't know whether that was really it.
Here's a couple of examples. And again, no expert in this, but I do know experts in it. Here's the administration. The examiner instructs the subject, please draw a line going from a number to a letter in ascending order. Begin here, points to 1, and draw a line from 1 to A, 2 to B, 3 to C, and get an idea of whether or not you can follow those instructions.
It's a dot to dot.
Kind of.
Yeah, okay. That seems like
a good test. And then here's another one. Copy this drawing as accurately as you can in the space below, and they give a drawing. Tippy
like the turtle.
Guernica. You have to, no, not turtle.
No.
They give you Guernica, and you have to do that one. No, they give you something simpler. And the whole idea is it's a really, really loose screen to give you an idea of whether or not you have to do more neurocognitive testing that would tell you much, much more. Somebody with early Alzheimer's, I am told by the experts who do this for a living, somebody with early Alzheimer's could easily pass the screen.
Oh.
That's not what this is for.
Well, that's not so good then.
So it's a simple screen. He passed it. It's great. It's wonderful. He had an exam. He passed it. That's great. It's wonderful. Whether or not he's 6'3" or 6'2", whether he's growing as he gets older, as most people don't, whether or not he's just this side of or that side of obese, all of that doesn't really matter. What matters are his policies, the people who he hires, what matter are the personnel in the office. What matters is that he's got Stephen Miller, who's basically a nativist, giving him advice on how to deal with the immigration issue, aided and abetted by a proven liar, Tom Cotton, and a proven liar, David Perdue, who support these policies, and presumably so does John Kelly and the other so-called grown-ups in the administration, because if they didn't, then Stephen Miller wouldn't be working there.
Yeah.
That's what's important, not what happened yesterday with the exam.
No, but it is fun to talk about. The part that I liked about the cognitive test was the animals. This makes it look like a child's test. There's a picture.
Well, you're looking for neurodevelopmental delay in adults. That's really what you're trying to do.
Developmental
delay.
And
Armando asked a very good question. Was it deceptive to do that? No, it was just incomplete. That's all. It's not. These are not the droids you're looking for. This is not the test that you would do if you're trying to pick up early Alzheimer's, but it's a very reasonable test to do if you're, in a hurry. You're a general physician. You're trying to get a sense of whether or not you have to look further. It's a screen. Yeah. So there's a lot of screens that are done by docs because they don't have 19 days to do a complete and thorough exam in every single category.
Yeah.
Now, the story that the doc says is he wasn't going to do this, but Trump said, do something. I need something.
Yeah.
Can you show that I'm mentally fit. So he did this, and this is a reasonable, quick thing to do. Yeah. I mean, if you fail this, you're in trouble.
I would say so.
But it's not, okay, now I have a clean mental bill of health and everything is fine. And should not be presented as that. What the doctor also did is he went ahead and said other things, and in talking to him, I don't have any concerns.
Okay.
And that's fine. That's his professional opinion. I don't take exception to this. I don't think it was meant to be deceptive. It was what it is, which is a simple screen that doesn't answer all the questions, and just leave it at that.
I tend to agree. I mean, Armando is insistent that it's deceptive in some ways by omission. I would say, I think I'd fall in the middle. I would say that I think the White House worked with Dr. Jackson, who's a pro and has been there for a while. Yesterday, people were pointing out he was, I guess, appointed to whatever position, or he came to his position under Obama. So that's supposed to be vouching. As I don't think Obama ever said, I vouch for the guy, although if you asked him, he probably would say, yeah, sure. I mean, I think he's a trusted professional. I think there was probably some discussion / negotiation, especially when it came to this cognitive assessment thing, where the White House said, this is what we need. And Dr. Jackson said, this is what I can do and what I can give you. Like, I'm not going to lie. I have
4 hours, and I want to spend 3.5 hours on your cardiac exam, so you can have a little bit of time with this.
We need the exam results that you're comfortable giving as a professional. Would you be able to say that I'm cognitively okay if I pass this test? Yes? Okay, good, let's do it. I might not feel great about saying it, but he's covered and he's professional about it. And he can say those things, and I'm sure that they pushed him. Can you say I'm the healthiest president ever? Well, no, we can't do that.
No, but let's work by analogy.
All right.
Okay, Michael Wolff is a professional journalist.
Yes.
He wrote a book.
He did. That makes him one.
He's a professional. Do you believe everything in the book because he's a professional? How does he compare to other professionals? Is there stuff in the book that's true or not true? I mean,
they should give him a uniform, Michael.
And then the doc gave him an exam. He's a professional. Is everything that he did exactly right? Is that what other professionals would do? For the most part, in both cases, the answer is yes. Yeah. I would suggest, or how do lawyers put it? I would posit that that what you learned from Wolff's book is at least as important as what you learned from the exam yesterday.
Okay.
And you should focus on neither. They're both simple pieces of information. What you should do is focus on how he appears in public, what he says, and what he does.
Yes.
That's way more important.
So therefore, I still think he's mentally deficient in many ways.
Well, you can think that based on what you say. I can think he's a jerk, and I think that's, unfortunately, there's no,
and this is
how
just
would we call it? The ADFCJT. It's the Armando Den from Connecticut jerk test. Oh. That's what we should be giving him, and there is no such thing.
You could formulate one.
We could.
Yeah. I did like the naming part, though.
Right?
Yeah. Well, all right. I think it, like I said, I think it falls someplace in the middle. The doctor has to be comfortable saying what he's saying. And I also think, by the way, that it's possible that for the public release purposes, they may have said, all right, fill out this form, Mr. President, with height and weight. Now, normally when I get a physical or go to a doctor, a new doctor or anything, they're pretty insistent about doing the height and weight themselves, but I think there's a liability issue there that exists with me that doesn't exist as between the president and this official physician. He can get that height and weight. If I need to give you a prescription, I'm checking it myself.
Well, but listen. Here's my opinion about this whole thing. He said dismissively. This is a one-day story, and focusing on his height and weight is like focusing on the S word.
But I love that.
I know, but the whole idea is what it meant.
Oh, well,
right?
Yes.
I mean, look,
getting to that.
He had this particular exam which mentioned his height and his weight, and also had this screen which was really inadequate to answer the questions people have about his mental capacity, and certainly none of it had anything to do with fitness for office. So what happens tomorrow or the next day? He either shows up, says something on TV, or he tweets. Do these questions get put to bed because of this? No.
All right, fine. So as long as they're up, these questions, we'll have a conversation with them.
Exactly right, and you should, and you should base it on what you're seeing, and you should base it on what he does. And so my point is that if the White House thought that having a routine physical was going to somehow answer all of the questions about his health and his mental health, they're deluding themselves, or as we like to say in the trade, they're crazy.
Okay, I can believe that. Armando's comments on the subject, I guess by way of summing up, he'll remind us that Rand Paul is a doctor. So there is that. And it's generally, at the very least, the presentation didn't strike him or many other people.
Ben Carson's a doctor, too.
True, also. And the presentation didn't strike him as particularly professional or doctory, more Trumpy than doctory. But, okay, fine. The doctor is looking to stay in his job, and he said what he could say without lying technically, I think. I think he tried to avoid that.
Yep.
So okay, all said and done, and I think some of that is some of this, like the 6'3" thing, I think is explainable. Like, hey man, it says right here he's 6'3". I don't know how it got there,
but there it is.
So
there it is.
This is the form I said I was going to read.
Meanwhile, while all this is happening, there are some special elections yesterday that happened.
Yes, they are all overweight.
They're all overweighted in terms of weighted toward the Democrats.
What did I say?
Taniel tweets, 4 elections in deeply Trump districts tonight all saw huge, that's Y-U-G-E, huge swings toward Dems compared to 2016 presidential results.
Okay.
Using BK elections district numbers, South Carolina HD 99 plus 15 net swing toward the Democrats. Iowa HD 06, 18% toward the Democrats. Wisconsin SD 10, the only one of the 4 that the Democrats won, but more on that, plus 24% or 27%, depending upon which number you use. And Wisconsin AD 58 plus 25. These were all big swings in the Democrats' direction. There were red areas, so winning 1 out of 4 is actually very good.
That is good news.
Scott Walker's quick reaction. Yep. Scott Walker's quick reaction to this is wake up call, we're in trouble.
Okay.
I started tweeting about that yesterday.
Are you able to hear the music today?
No.
Okay. Just checking. Still haven't
but
been
I
able
can
to
hear your voice.
Yeah.
You told me to be quiet.
Oh my God, Greg. All right. Well, we'll take our 2-minute break then. I'll wake up the kids and we'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, where the whole program is overweight and crazy. It's time to get everybody moving. Update on the KITM World Headquarters situation. Lunches are packed. Backpacks are ready to go. 10 o'clock break time will be time to retrieve the elder teenager from his bedchamber. Imagine sleeping until 10 o'clock on a school day. It's like my teenage dream. But I guarantee he'll be upset that I wake him up. I will not bring a microphone into the room, though. He's underweight and crazy, so you don't want to deal with that. Okay, Greg, still with us, assuring us that we can stop talking about how mentally unfit the president is for the moment.
Right, and we can go back to crucial Waukesha County. Yes.
Were they involved at all in the election? There's only one county in Wisconsin, as I understand.
This is actually St. Croix County.
Okay, there's 2.
And Scott Walker's quick reaction to the huge swings Wisconsin Dems enjoyed tonight underlines what's at stake here in this November, Walker's 3rd term. This is Taniel's tweet. And he gives 3 examples of Scott Walker, 1 minute after the other. This is in my pundit roundup here.
Okay.
Scott Walker says, wake up call. Can't presume the voters know we invested more actual dollars into schools than ever before. Help us share the good news. Wake up call. Can't presume voters know that more people are working than ever before. Help us share the good news. Wake up call. Can't presume the voters know we were getting positive things done in Wisconsin. Help share the good news. So, he's aware that he lost and lost big. That's not helpful, but here is what's helpful. And this comes from a fellow whose name I won't be able to pronounce right, Trygve Olsen. Trygve Olsen. Thank you. and says, this is my former home district. I managed several campaigns in this district in the early 90s. It's the kind of place that started the GOP tide in a special in 1990 that I worked on. This is a sign of not just a significant wave, but a 74-94 style realignment, he says.
Well.
And Christian Schneider, who is the USA Today Milwaukee Journal Sentinel columnist.
Schneider?
No,
I don't know. I'm kidding.
Schneider.
Some French.
Schneider. Christian Schneider. So it says here, some inside stuff on SD10. That's Senate 10 in a state Senate seat district, that we're talking about here.
Okay.
You know how everybody always talks about GOP dominance in Waukesha County? Well, St. Croix County is the Waukesha County of the Twin Cities.
Oh.
If ours lose it, it's catastrophic. Okay. In a down year, even Romney won St. Croix County by 12. It's basically wealthy suburban Republicans who have fled the Twin Cities, but it looks like the GOP may quickly be losing them. In Wisconsin's SD10 race, the Republican, whose name is Jarchow, Jarchow, actually did well in the eastern rural working class areas of the district, what we would consider to be Trump country. But, and this is a place that went to Trump, I think, by 17 points. But in the wealthy GOP areas bordering the Mississippi River, it was a bloodbath for the GOP.
Oh.
In a low turnout race, the Republican was getting an astounding 1/7 of the Sheila Harstoff 2016 vote in GOP strongholds.
Wow. Okay.
In GOP strongholds, they got 1/7 of what they did in 2016.
Yeah.
While the Democrat got about 1/3.
Oh. Okay. Well, that's
leading
bigger.
To some insane local results.
Not certifiably insane. It's just something we think.
Right. Well, we didn't do the screen for it, but we suspect. Enthusiasm gap, bad messaging, and Trumpism are all suspects. Low turnout special elections are notoriously hard to gauge, but at the very least, it looks like the Democrats are holding a good hand before the 2018 flop.
The good kind of flop.
Yeah.
That's weird. Hey, you don't want it. Most people will take away from that. Oh, we're going to flop in 2018. Why? No, I think we're talking about the poker flop reveal of the cards.
So back to Trygve.
Yes.
He says, a wave is coming. A district held by the GOP for 17 years. Years ago, I managed a losing campaign in this district and later a winning one. This is a suburban rural district. If the GOP is losing Wisconsin 10, look out.
Okay.
He says. Right? And then Matthew Dowd adds, Democrats just won a state Senate district in western Wisconsin they hadn't held in 20 years, in which Trump carried by 17 points. You don't think a huge anti-GOP wave is coming? Think again. So the import there, I mean, this is one of those things that reverberates for those people who know this particular area and what it means. We all could look at Alabama or even Virginia and get a sense, that there's some earthquakes here and reverberations and aftershocks. But if you know this Wisconsin district, it's on that scale. And a big deal.
Okay. I can believe that. I'll take it. It's good news, that's for sure.
Yep. Meanwhile, here's a piece by Zeke Miller to change the subject slightly. And this is, this is all going to be processed, right? Washington, AP, House conservatives say there are enough Republican opponents to reject the GOP leader's plan to prevent government shutdown. I think what they wanted to do is a short-term kick it down the road spending thing.
All right.
A continuing resolution, like a 1 week or whatever, buy us some time, we can negotiate a little more. And conservatives aren't going for it. The House Freedom Caucus won't vote for it. You can't do it without Democratic votes.
Well, okay. That's interesting. There was some discussion about that yesterday.
Yeah, so explain what that means.
Well, I mean, here, I think this on its face is clear what's going on. Okay, so House conservatives, you say the Freedom Caucus, that's probably who they mean.
Yeah.
All right, so they're not going to agree to the Republican leadership's preferred plan, which is to basically do nothing, to just say fund the government at current levels for X amount of time.
Some short period of time. Yeah.
So on the one hand, on the other side of the aisle, Democrats are pushing back and saying, listen, we got to settle the DACA issue, and if there's no deal in place for settling the DACA issue, I'm not going to vote for something super important, a must-pass bill. In this case, the bill to keep the government up and running. Well, at the same time, even a clean bill that does nothing but continue to fund the government at current levels and makes no changes isn't going to pass. Democrats had probably threatened not to vote for that either, and say, which I appreciate the effort in bringing us a clean CR, but I told you what the stakes were. You have to work on DACA and nail that down, or we're not going to help you run the government you're supposed to be running.
Especially after the whole S show of the past week.
Yes, right. And so, of course, at that point, people also do point out, well, the Republicans are the majority in the House. They're the majority in the Senate. They have the White House. You can pass anything you want, pretty much. I mean, so long as some things, of course, can be filibustered in the Senate, and the CR could be. What's interesting is that they're in a rather unique position that bringing a clean CR, even short-term, long-term, whatever, still might not pass muster in the Senate because Democrats have said, look, if there's no DACA deal, there's no dice here. So even a clean CR doesn't pass muster with us. And that doesn't even enter into the picture because you don't even have the entire Republican conference in the House. You don't have the Republican votes you need to pass it with one party's votes, because conservatives from the other side say, well, we won't accept anything. Either, I don't know whether their main objection is that it's short term or something without more cuts for poor people or whatever their particular objections are.
Or not enough for the military or whatever it is. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
So the whole kabuki song and dance here has been as you point out, the Republicans have the White House, the Senate, and the House.
Yeah.
And they were maneuvering to blame Democrats for this. And one way to do that is to pass it in the House, have Trump say he normally would sign it. It gets filibustered in the Senate by Democrats, and therefore you could point your finger and say Democrats are closing the government down.
Yeah, that was the plan.
You can't do this because it's the Republicans in the House that can't get their act together. You're not even at the stage where you can blame Democrats. You can't get it past the part where Republicans are supposed to do the window dressing part, allowing this false claim of Democrats blocking everything is ready to be is ripe and ready to be thrown out there.
Yeah.
You can't even do that because they can't get their act together, and it's clearly all on Republicans now. And even better, from our point of view, it's all on conservative Republicans.
Yeah, right. For right now, it certainly is. There was some discussion last night as a Democratic pundit strategist, Bill Scher, was positing last night the counterintuitive of, actually Democrats will be blamed for the shutdown because, and he laid out a case, and it makes a certain amount of sense. But of course, this helps undo it in a big way, but in more than just the obvious way. House Republicans, who, if they joined with their other House Republican colleagues, could pass anything, that they put together, and anything. Doesn't matter. You can't filibuster it in the House. They could pass anything and then put all the pressure on the Senate. But because their particular demands aren't being met, and the numbers being what they are critical to the ability to pass something in the House. Because their demands aren't being met, they're saying they're going to put the brakes on this thing. All the Republican leadership has to do, at some point, they do have to pass a bill, is take their concerns into account and work out a compromise plan that will get the necessary votes. Somehow, though, doing that in the Senate with Democrats is like, what are you talking about? We don't need to deal with Democrats. We should be able to do this with one party. Only you're not. So the reality is, if you had put together a DACA deal like the one that the president approved of at 10:15 a.m. the other day when he talked to Durbin and Graham, but then changed his mind in the next hour and 45 minutes as he spoke to Stephen Miller and Tom Cotton and David Perdue, then you would have been able to get this thing done. But because they refused to acknowledge the demands of Senate Democrats, they're not going to be. They would never have been able to get it done, likely, in the Senate. But these objections are totally valid ones because they come from Republicans who are actually the most conservative, radical idiots the House has to offer. And somehow the press, gives a the punditry anyway, gives a generalized pass to their outrageous demands because they're conservative Republicans and we love them. I don't know. I think Cher just trying to be sort of counterintuitive there and maybe overthought it a little.
So that's the background there. And we'll have to see this play out. And you know what? It's Wednesday, so there's only 2 days. Mm-hmm. And, it's not at all clear what's going to happen. But because nobody trusts each other, and that gets back to the whole liar thing, because, the big story, I think, there, and that was my pundit roundup lead. Senators Cotton and Perdue exposed as liars, although they still have government jobs. And here's James Hohmann speaking. The big idea, credibility is like virginity. You only get to lose it once.
Oh, my.
Well, if you can say S show, you get to say this.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
By Sunday morning, the memories had not cleared up. I'm telling you, he didn't use the word. I'm telling you, it's a gross misrepresentation, Perdue said indignantly. I didn't hear it, and I was sitting no further away from Donald Trump than Dick Durbin was. Cotton said he doubled down again last night and said, my way is the right way. If Durbin and I disagree, I'm right, he's wrong. And then they both impugned the Illinois senator's integrity by alleging he has a history of making stuff up, none of which is true.
Yeah.
And then Hohmann writes, now we know the real story. 3 White House officials said Perdue and Cotton told the White House they heard S-House rather than S-Hole, allowing them to deny the president's comments on television over the weekend, according to Josh Dawsey, Robert Costa, and Ashley Parker from the Washington Post. Cotton and Perdue will be defined by this moment, in part, Hohmann writes, because other senators will remember their attacks on Durbin. This will make them less trustworthy as potential partners and thus less effective as members of Congress. And then there's other stories that 2 other Republican officials confirm this story. There's Eric Erickson telling people that after Trump made the comment, he started calling allies to find out how it played because he was really proud of it. I mean, there's enough stuff going on to know that he really said that so that this won't fly. And then, of course, if you want some political theater, you had the Christian Nielsen hearings yesterday where Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and Dick Durbin basically got her on record as saying that she couldn't recall anything. But she called it Trump used strong language, but everybody else used defensive language.
Yes.
And Durbin said it's the same language. Everybody was just repeating what Trump had said.
Oh.
Well, I don't remember that part. I mean, it just came across as being incredibly self-serving.
Very weird. By the way, I got a note on the pronunciation of Nielsen's name. I don't know how she says it because she's from Florida, so she might very well just say Kirsten. Yeah. But I guess in Norwegian, and we're all very concerned about Norway these days, top priority, that KJ sound is sort of like an SH sound. She'd be Sheerston, not Sheerhouse or Sheerhole, but Sheersten, and I guess Nielsen. Although the SEN, I am also advised, indicates that it's probably of Danish extraction rather than Norwegian. So mixed messages everywhere. She probably says Kirsten, but but I guess apparently the KJ. Is
her middle name Yokel? Maybe it's Icelandic.
No,
That's
Icelandic,
I think
it's like Michelle, to be honest. Okay. Right. Yokel. They have like a click to it.
Joketh.
Yeah,
Joketh.
I think
it's the L's are pronounced as TH, but that we're not going there. We already have a very strong, at least I do have a very strong record of mispronouncing everything.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to change now and just try to find out the right way.
Right. I thought I like to throw it in there because listeners have some special expertise. It's great to throw that stuff in there.
Far more than us on this particular area.
I'd say, yeah. So it's,
anyway, Matthew Iglesias points out you can feel already that despite everything, there's going to be massive resistance to admitting there's no DACA deal because Republicans don't want a DACA deal.
Yeah. That was actually kind of central to the to that Cher article, which I guess I have to share, no pun intended, at some point. But yeah, he seems insistent on the idea that Republicans are somehow loath to admit that they don't want that deal, even
they don't, because if they put it up for a vote in both houses, it would pass.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily popular. I don't know if it's really popular among those members. I mean, I think they don't want to pass it. I don't know if they acknowledge that it's popular. I don't know where they are on this. It's hard to tell, and that's why you can't make a deal with them. That's the big problem I have with what's going on is, well, if we did this and did that, then we wouldn't be in this position. They couldn't play it this way.
Well, you can't do that with Trump because he changes his mind every second, but it turns out you also can't do it with McConnell and Ryan.
Yeah, this is a huge problem. None of the leaders are willing to deal in good faith.
Yes. Jennifer Rubin points out Senators Cotton and Perdue are outed for lying on Trump's behalf. I mean, it's just blatantly out there that these guys lied.
Did you read Rubin?
I did.
I saw Brian Beutler tweeting something about it. I didn't get a chance to read it. Is he correct in saying that she thinks that Durbin would be within his rights to refer Cotton and Perdue to the ethics committee over their lies? Did she say that outright, or is it just hinted?
No. In addition, Durbin might consider filing ethics claims against both of the senators seeking appropriate punishment by the Senate. The Ethics Committee has jurisdiction to consider, quote, complaints and investigate allegations of improper conduct which may reflect upon the Senate violations of law, violations of the Senate Code of Official Conduct, and violations of rules and regulations of the Senate relating to the conduct of individuals in the performance of their duties as members or as officers and employees, and to make appropriate findings of fact and conclusions with respect thereto.
Mm-hmm. He could certainly claim a point of personal privilege on the floor and speak for, well, I don't know whether the Senate...
He can claim it's improper conduct.
Yeah, right. I mean, he said, you've impugned my motives and integrity. You took down Elizabeth Warren's words for this at one point and made her, and you held a vote to shut her up for the rest of the day. I don't know what the outcome would be. They might very well say, fine, the Senate now finds, being 51-49 Republican, that Dick Durbin lied, now officially, and you shut up. I think They could do that.
So lying isn't even controversial anymore.
Oh, well.
These guys lied. I mean, you can say that in the media. I have half a dozen headlines and other things here about especially Cotton and Durbin lying. What they were lying about was Trump, who himself was lying.
Trump, they won't say is lying. Just
now, Lindsey Graham more or less has supported Durbin's point, trying to not necessarily come flat out and say the other two guys are lying. He just says things like, I was there and I don't have any problem with my memory and it's not evolving, and that sort of thing. Frank Bruni says, one day it's all sun and sycophantic fun on one of the president's fancy golf courses where you're telling yourself that to marvel at his putts and swoon over his swing are small prices for influence and will pay off in the end. The next, you're in the middle of a surreal feud among your fellow Republicans about whether he used S-hole or S-house to describe poor countries of dark-skinned people, and you look like a sellout and a fool for having thought and said better about him. That's the story of Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Its moral couldn't be clearer. There's no honor or wisdom in cozying up to Donald Trump just to heap a manure. So that's part of the problem with trying to make deal with this guy.
Yeah.
Which everybody, by the way, in the business world already knows. Banks know that. Yeah. That's why he has to go to international banks.
I almost let it pass that you actually used the word deal. It only struck me again this morning. That was like the big selling point, the art of the deal. And we've got to make great deals was his big, applause line early on in the campaign. And he kind of abandoned that, but he kept coming back to that. And his ability to make deals was the whole point of making him president, apparently, in the minds of his Trump voters. He hasn't made any. He hasn't been able to make any. Every time he gets close to making one, he sabotages it. And I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know. So let me give you this last one. Right. This is USA Today, and it's an editorial. In Trump's White House, lies beget lies. And here's a section from it. It's bad enough that the President of the United States is an inveterate liar. It's even worse when members of Congress and his cabinet feel compelled to lie on his behalf. 5 days after word leaked out that President Trump used bigoted and vulgar remarks, which is really the point, not the S word, during an Oval Office meeting on immigration, and here I bolded it when I put it in the pundit roundup, it's clear who's telling the truth. Spoiler alert, it's not the president and his enablers.
Oh. Okay. USA Today. I mean, that means it's in front of every hotel room door in America.
So what's it all mean? Here's Charlie Cook. Make no mistake about it. When a party holds the White House and majorities in both the House and Senate, they own any government shutdown. things the president has said and done over the last week, and that's what we're referring to here, is lying, have only increased the price the GOP has to pay for that ownership. And by the way, don't forget, the whole thing got torpedoed because Stephen Miller and other hardliners suddenly showed up at those meetings.
Yeah.
And Trump whisperer Maggie Haberman writes, thoughts about Trump aside, this is a routine reminder that Kelly knows extremely little about politics. That's John Kelly's chief of staff. Has some of his own ingrained thoughts on immigration. That's a nice way of saying that he's a nativist and a white supremacist. And has let Miller largely run the show on this issue, to which Kelly should get faulted because, as I said before, if they're not white supremacists, why do they let Miller in the White House in the first place?
Yes, that is a good question. What's the answer?
The answer is the white supremacists.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. That does solve it. Because it was a harder question if you assume they're not.
Yeah, I suppose. So, there you have it. That's pretty much my summary for today. I do have to throw in this one tweet by Ben Yellen because I always like to think of, shared values. We always talk about this and how between conservatives and liberals there ought to be some common ground that we could find. And Ben finds some. Okay. He writes, we have many differences as Americans, but we all share one value. We all hate Chris Christie.
Well, that's true. It wasn't the one I thought, but
well, he's right.
I have to agree. We may share like two values.
Oh?
Although Chris Christie doesn't hate Chris Christie. I guess.
Yeah, well, that's he's
a
party
doesn't
of
count,
one.
then I think I would throw Donald Trump in there. And several other names too. But okay, it's good to know that there's shared values, and that's a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody had a great time the last couple of days, just tweeting like a countdown to New Year's Eve. Chris Christie no longer holds public office.
Right, exactly.
All right.
Tom Bonnier, who is the CEO of TargetSmart, which is a data analytics firm, writes, fun fact, if the GOP candidates underperform Trump in every Wisconsin Senate district this November like they did yesterday, the Republicans would only win 3 of 33 districts.
If only. Yeah.
If only.
I don't know how much you can extrapolate from it, but the point is there was an election and those guys didn't show.
They did bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Not
That's
only
really
did they just didn't come out. 1/7. That's terrible.
Here's one for you. I'm going to tell you the quote, and you have to guess who it is. You won't be able to, so I'll tell you in the end, but it's just fun. Okay? There is a blue Democrat tsunami wave coming in 2018 like we've never seen. Our side better wake up.
Gandhi.
Close. It's the next best thing to Gandhi you could find in the American political scene. It's Joe Walsh.
That is close.
I mean, he's a Gandhi-like figure, right? But
sure.
I'm just trying to give you an idea of just how pervasive the idea now is that the Republicans are going to get their clock cleaned in November.
Excellent.
And then you still have to step back and say, well, if they all know that, why are they acting like this?
Yeah. And I have no answer for that one. Except, the last time I didn't have an answer, the answer was they're white supremacists. That may also be true.
That's still an answer.
Okay.
Stephen Miller is still there.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll just give you some of that to chew on. I got other stuff if you want on the Pundit Roundup here today. For example, I have a fascinating piece by Michael McDonald, who talks about his idea on voter registration and national voter IDs.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting. I'll put it for you at the very bottom. Okay. But with that, this is Greg Dworkin speaking to my friend David Waldman, Kagro, in the morning. I'm not lying about that, and he's not lying about he's got an hour left on the show.
No kidding.
So he'll do that, and then I will talk to you tomorrow. No Pundit Roundup, but I'll be back and figure out something to say. I have a feeling something will happen. But take care till then, and enjoy the rest of your day, even if it starts late.
Right. Thanks. It does start my day starts 2 hours late anyway, every day. Thanks, Greg. That's the truth of it. Doing a show from 9 to 11 and then starting, your work day means those of you who start work at 9 o'clock. Well, if you're listening now and you start work at 9 o'clock, I'd like to have your job. You're listening to the radio for 2 hours at work. Congratulations. I wish I was. But getting the rest of the day done starting at 11 poses a bit of a challenge. I'm tired. It's taking me a long time. Anyway, just commenting on, I love the photo, by the way, that illustrates the USA Today piece that he read from second to last. There's a great photo of some people holding up some signs just with one letter per poster board, I guess, that says liar on it, and that's fun. But over to their right, stage left, is a hand-painted sign on a big piece of cardboard with white lettering, which is the opposite of what I would otherwise suggest people use in terms of lettering. Paint your cardboard white and then use black lettering, but okay. But I like the sentiment. Trump, it's not punctuated at all, as far as I can tell. But if it were, it would read, Trump, America's stupid Putin, which I think is a hilarious sentiment. Unpunctuated as it is, of course, the sign says, Trump, America's stupid Putin, which is also not a bad idea. Trump there being a verb. But I think it's a good thought no matter how you read it. But punctuation is important. Don't neglect it. Don't neglect to pay attention to it in school. All right. It almost the top of the hour here, and we are expecting Joan McCarter for the second half of the hour. But our break is coming up. We'll talk our way into it. I will take that break and shoo child number 1 out the door to the school bus and roust child number 2. And you'll hear his plates clinking and clanking shortly if he gets his butt out of bed as he's supposed to. Shortly in the background, and we'll dive into the day's news with that gentle clacking going on in the background. There's plenty more where that came from. There's still more even in the Pundit Roundup if we wanted to dive into that. Lots that I put away in Pocket overnight, lots still in the Twitter feed. We'll decide where we want to go and talk a little bit to Joan about where she wants to take us in the next segment. Coming up right after this. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Just a few seconds behind schedule as I dashed upstairs to roust the troops and shoo the other troops out the door into their forced march into the snow, the blizzard conditions. The half-inch of snow or so on our front steps still, because I haven't had a chance to shovel it, because, hi, I'm here with you. You could be shoveling my front steps. It's not a big deal. Should be able to just be careful on your way out the door, dear, and make sure you lock it behind you so that there aren't enemy troops bursting in through the door during the show, or the wind doesn't blow the door back open during the show while I suffer in the cold here, although the dulcet tones of our conversation with Joan McCarter shall no doubt keep me warm with the blazing intellect. Okay, I can stop trying to find a ridiculous rhetorical way out of this one. But, yeah, all right, well, we've got that on tap. Let me check in, by the way, on comments that may have come in during the previous segment and conversation. Let's see. Oh, look at this. U.S. Reality Check has a tweet deemed worthy by Rebecca Romans, along with the comment, ha, 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 ha. I don't know how many ha's there are in here. If I had a producer, I would say, how many ha's do I have to say to get this correct? U.S. Reality Check tweeting, Eric Trump, media can't keep up with my father because he's too energetic. Yeah, I do. I get the point. Of course, he's the most energetic president ever. I was, of course, reminded yesterday during the whole physical thing, just to return to that for a little bit, of the time that the super healthy Donald Trump decided to take a golf cart the 700 yards that the rest of the leadership of the G7 countries was taking together in between photo opportunities. And look, maybe he just didn't care for his first opportunity to talk to the G7 leaders. It's the, let's see, do we remember who is in on the G7 and who isn't? The U.S., UK, France, Japan, Canada, Who else is in there? Did I say Japan? I don't know. I can't even remember what I already said. But, of course, key allies spending a few very important moments together, talking privately, walking all of 700 yards. He was late to the photo opportunity, of course, because he wouldn't walk that far and wanted to take a golf cart instead. That is not super healthy in my view, but maybe he's really healthy and dislikes walking. Anything's possible. Let's see. What other... thank you. Greg is still listening. And Greg reports, by the way, that now he hears the music, now that he's off the Skype with me. But yeah, that's what we've been hearing all week. It comports with what you've got there, Greg. So your report seems to be correct. When you're listening to the stream, the music goes out. That's the key issue. It really helps if you can hear it on Skype because it cues you without my having to say anything, but we'll make do with that. Let's see. What else have we here? Karen D sends us this one. We could find out Trump's true height soon enough. Oh, yes, and the photo is a Photoshop job here of Donald Trump in front of one of those booking photo height measurement things where they have the chart, the lines drawn behind him so you can figure out from that how tall he is. That would be a fun way to find out. Of course, let's see, the other notes that came in, Greg was saying Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, US. That's our G7. Thank you very much. And with good advice to zap the prams after the show. I am disappointed if we have to zap the prams on the brand new Mac Mini, which has been up and running for just a couple of months, but I guess anything can happen. And I try to keep it so uncluttered, too. Nothing on there but show stuff, and I even clear off the show archives each month so that we're not storing a great deal on there, but we'll go back and see. We'll do anything at all, technically, to make the show run better. But a good idea and a good reminder. Zap the pram. Okay. I see Bill Scher is online arguing at the moment with Greg Sargent. And who else is in on this one? Let's see. Jesse Ferguson and Greg Sargent in this exchange. Here's the deal. Let's see. Politico piece that Jesse Ferguson is tweeting around that says, shutdown would backfire on GOP, Republicans say. Bill Scher, of course, sharing his opinion. I personally think that it's the opposite of the correct lesson to draw. And I personally think the opposite of that opposite, too. One of the things about Bill Scher's article, if we don't get to it in its entirety before we talk to Joan, or maybe Joan wants to talk about it, is he comes up with a couple of lessons and says, well, look here, the Republicans, when they shut down the government in 95, they got the blame for it. When Republicans shut down the government in 2013, they got the blame for it. So when Democrats shut down the government now, they'll get the blame for it, which is, I don't know. You can draw anything you want, I suppose, if you manipulate the situation enough. But to me, I'm like, okay, well, the Republicans were the ones who, and I guess here's the logic that's missing from this. He provides it. When I say it's missing, I have failed to cite it at this point. Is he says, see, Democrats will be blamed for the shutdown this time because they will be, in his view, taking the action which causes the government to shut down. That is to say that they will be declining to provide votes for cloture on a CR in the Senate because they're holding out over DACA. Whereas I think another very valid way of viewing it is, look, Republicans control the floor. Republicans have the majority. They absolutely can pass a CR that has majority support. And remember, it only really requires simple majority support if it's not filibustered, and perhaps it wouldn't be filibustered if you took seriously the objections of 49 out of the 100 senators and actually compromised for once. But you won't do that. So the action that closes the government is the act of declining to put a bill that can pass with majority support on the floor. And they're both valid ways of viewing it. And it seems ridiculous to say my way is the correct way, particularly if you're going to use the examples of 1995 and 2013. In both instances, Republicans holding the majority in Congress, at least in the House anyway, where the impetus for the shutdown came from. Both times Republicans holding the majority, both times refusing to compromise with Democrats and voting or insisting on a vote being held that would only pass if they held a supermajority. In other words, trying to govern as though you have a supermajority when you have only the slimmest of majorities. And that doesn't make any sense. There's no reason in the world why anyone should feel entitled to the kind of legislation that if there were 60 Republicans you might be able to pass when there are only 51. You lost the presidential popular vote, which I know doesn't count for anything legally, but you lost the presidential popular vote by millions. And yet you're holding out for the president's extraordinarily unpopular version of how policies should go, version of how events should unfold and what to do about immigration. Extraordinarily unpopular position he's taking, extraordinarily unpopular president, lost the popular votes by millions. And in addition, you have 51 of the barest of majorities in the Senate. And if you counted the total number of votes cast for Republicans who are currently in the Senate versus the number of votes cast for Democrats who are currently in the Senate, also not legally binding, obviously, doesn't count for anything. In other words, the situation is millions more preferred Hillary Clinton's approach for the presidency, and tens of millions more preferred the Democratic approach for how to run things in the Senate than the Republican ones. And so in the face of all that, plus the, yes, very legally binding fact that you could muster only 51 seats out of the 100 out there and call it a majority, to stand there and say, I'm entitled to govern as though I had 60 and everyone should roll over for it, is an incredible and intentional misreading of the tenor of the country here. So, who will be blamed for it? Bill Scher, in his, role as the counterintuitive here, says Democrats should be blamed. And he argues by saying every time Republicans were in the majority and the government shut down, they blamed Republicans. Well, Republicans are in the majority now and the government will shut down. Why won't they also blame Republicans for it? Why isn't that the lesson? Well, he looks at a different part of the situation and therefore concludes that a different part of the situation controls. All we know is history records the 2013 and 1995 shutdowns as being the Republicans' fault. Both times they were in the majority in the House. That's the case here. In fact, they're in the majority in the Senate and hold the White House. I think the case is even stronger for blaming them again. He thinks the opposite. Roll the dice, I guess. We'll see. Greg Sargent objects, by the way. I should let me open this all up in a separate tab so that I have it on hand to share with you later, and also gives me a better view of things here. Jesse Ferguson begins the conversation with the Politico article saying that it'll backfire on Republicans. Scher says, I think it's the opposite. His headline is, shutdowns are for losers. Just ask Newt Gingrich and Ted Cruz. I guess they're both published in Politico there. Greg Sargent answering Bill by saying, Trump set up the shutdown by killing DACA for the express purpose of using Dreamer's fate to extract other immigration concessions from Dems in this very negotiation. The original act of attaching non-budgetary matters to this was committed by Trump. Bill says setup is not enough to shift blame. It doesn't have to be shifted, you see, though. It's going to lay on Republicans, I feel. Democrats have agency. No one would be making them shut down the government. It's their choice. If they do it, they will own it. Armando in the middle of this one. I spoke with Bill just briefly yesterday, but I found that it was probably not worth it. Armando, not because Bill Scher is stupid or a bad pundit or a bad person, just because it wasn't really worth my time. I saw what was going on here, as we both simply were looking at different aspects of the problem and coming to different conclusions. Armando probably found the same thing pretty quickly. He says, do you just ignore all the evidence to the contrary? Polling, media perspective, etc.? By the way, is your objection one of the political tactics or on principle? One of political tactics or on principle. Bill says, I don't think polling today matters much. Uh-oh. He's in trouble. Not only because Greg could chime in and tell him that it in fact does and always did, but also because it puts Armando in the position, and I don't see him in the conversation anymore, at least not right here. I might have to scroll down further. Puts Armando in a position of agreeing with Greg on that one. So we'll see whether he comes around to doing that. I don't think polling matters much. The coverage will change once we're in shutdown. I have a principle against stupid political tactics. I have a principle. I tried very carefully to be to walk gently with Bill. He's nominally on our side here, and I found it too trying in order to continue the conversation. Plus, I was kind of busy. Scouts night last night. Jesse Ferguson back in the conversation. I'm 100% sure Republicans will try to blame Democrats for the shutdown, and I am too, and that's why it sort of bothers me when they're facilitated by nominal Democrats. He's a Democrat. I don't know why I say nominal. That's foolish. It's just, I think he's wrong about the situation and a Democrat. I'm 100% sure Republicans will try to blame Democrats for the shutdown, for sure. I don't expect it will work. What voters know is, 1, Trump created the problem. 2, Trump rejected the bipartisan solution to the problem. 3, Trump's party controls all of Washington. His base will blame Democrats. Hannity will go nuts, but independent voters aren't likely to buy it when the facts make a pretty clear case. There has literally never been a shutdown where one party controls Washington. Hard to blame others. Bill answers, if a shutdown occurs because of a Senate Democratic filibuster, it does not matter that Republicans are in a majority. Were McConnell's filibusters Harry Reid's fault? And let's see. Somebody else chimes in here. Dawn Hones, my best guess at the pronunciation, just chiming in to agree with Jesse there. Rightfully so. They have no ability to govern, she says, with regard to the Republicans. So I'll save that and pass that on to you so that you can take a look at the exchange. My own exchange with him was similar in nature. And now I feel like we're going to have to give some time to his article and his argument. Just to be fair, I did say that there was a nugget in there that made a certain amount of sense. So perhaps we can pull it out there. We can lay out his argument for it, and maybe Joan has something to say about it. The shutdowns are for losers piece in Politico by Bill Scher argues this way. When congressional Republicans provoked 2 government shutdowns in 1995, the public held them responsible. When they shut down the government in 2013, Republican approval hit its lowest point in 20 years. In neither case did Republicans achieve their policy objectives. Why are Democrats taking a page from a failed playbook? In case we don't get all the way through. Again, his point is that Republicans provoked, that they, in his view, took the actions that precipitated the shutdown in 2013 and in 1995, but that Democrats would be taking the action that provokes the shutdown in 2018. And I don't think that's really all that clear. But I guess if you had to pare it down to say, the most near, the closest proximate cause, I guess he's got a point. If it did come down to a Democratic filibuster in the end, then you could blame it on them. Here comes Joan McCarter. We'll see what she thinks about these things. Hey, Joan, how are you? Joan?
Fine. How are you, David?
Good. We're suffering under blizzard conditions.
My goodness.
Yeah. I'll give you fair warning. Apparently, we're having difficulty getting our warning music for the break to pipe out over Skype. So I'll have to just give you sort of verbal or perhaps behind-the-scenes text warnings when these things are happening. But
That's
just wanted you to know
fine.
that. I was, we got a half an inch of snow and school's delayed 2 hours. You know how we do things here, so.
Well, I understand.
Yeah, well, like I said, they build a lot of these vacations into our schedule, but I have shutdown on the mind here today, and I imagine you must
So
too.
I hear, and Bill Scher's a good guy.
Yeah.
His heart's in the right place. He's on
Yeah.
our side, but he's totally wrong.
Yeah, I think so. And he makes I began reading the articles. I think it's unfair to say he has no point whatsoever, but I do think that he's like a lot of pundits. Sometimes you gotta take the counterintuitive narrative in order to break through and see if you can get people to pay attention. I don't think he makes a good analogy. With 95 in 2013, I think argue in favor of blaming the Republicans this time too. And I don't know why he thinks the opposite. Particularly, my guess is obviously he says, okay, if people view the proximate cause of the shutdown as being the Democratic filibuster of a, let's say, otherwise clean CR, because there's no DACA deal, they'll view that as the proximate cause and then therefore reason that they must blame Democrats. But
DACA, that's putting it in a completely theoretical, hypothetical frame.
It is. And
which
of course,
doesn't work when you have Donald Trump as president.
Yeah. Not only that, but I mean, I know he's anxious to take into account the filibuster here, and I can't ignore that. But remember also, the filibuster isn't what people ever think it is. We did a lot of work to try to change people's minds about what filibusters really are and how they work and what they look like. But remember that a Democratic filibuster here won't show up on television. There won't be people walking around, past department store windows full of brand new television sets, all tuned to the filibuster and saying, "Can you believe this stuff?" Nothing will happen on the Senate floor. It just won't be debated. And Democrats will say, "We won't give you those votes." And Mitch McConnell will say, "Then fine, I won't bring that to the floor. We'll do some other stuff. We'll do some of these terrible nominations." And people won't notice that there is a filibuster, probably.
Right.
He could engineer it so that they do, and that might change the situation.
He could try.
But I doubt it.
Harry Reid tried to do that, bring in the cots, make everybody stay up all night.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really move the needle.
It tends not to. So I would be very skeptical. And he gets down to, in the next paragraph or so, pointing out that as of today, DACA is popular. 70% approve of it in a recent CBS poll, even though in his tweets he said, "I don't believe polls anymore." But okay, whatever. I think he's doing what he needs to do to make an argument as the argument moves. But that's important. The fact that 70% approve of it means that 70% of the people, when presented with the argument, well, Democrats did filibuster it, but it was because there's no DACA deal, and they told the president at the outset that there had to be one in order to get this bill done, and the president did everything he could to prevent there from being a deal, and we remember that because the guy said S-hole, and now we're stuck with that in our heads. No one's going to forget his obstructionism in this. That's going to outweigh any filibuster, unless they get on the floor and say S-hole, S-hole, S-hole over and over, which I don't, necessarily dissuade them from doing, but I think this narrative is fixed.
I believe it is. Particularly when we have a president who's been acting so capricious on this issue.
Yes.
You can't leave Trump out of the equation this time.
Yeah, it would be foolish to ever try to leave him out of any equation. And it's his main goal in life is not to be left out of any equations, even if it's about who's the biggest jerk in the world.
Yeah.
So I doubt.
At one point Trump is saying, "Bring me your immigration plan. I'll take the heat for it. You guys come together and decide it. I'll take the heat for it." And then the next day he's saying, "No, we can't have all these people from shithole countries."
Yeah. So, and that's okay now to say that, apparently. So don't worry about it. Thank you, Donald Trump. We thank you for that much. I don't know. So I think it's I don't know that it's an oops. It's a virtue now. You get a little patch for saying what the president said. Okay. You can't blame it all on Bill Scher. Other people are wrong about this too. Most of them are Republicans, though. So we could talk about them, certainly. We now down to, is it another Friday deadline? Did they at least do
It's another Friday deadline. Okay. And I just wrote up the latest as far as we know. They think, apparently Paul Ryan has decided that, put some Obamacare things in there and I can get my caucus to vote on it.
Obamacare repeal things, presumably?
Kind of repeal things, pushing off some of the taxes that still have always been unpopular, and the Cadillac tax, the medical device tax, the insurance tax, postponing those again. I don't think that that's probably enough of a sweetener for the Freedom Caucus, and in fact, they've said it's not.
Okay. What are they after up there, down there?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. I just thought maybe
I haven't seen a coherent statement of policy from the Freedom Caucus as to what they want to keep the government going.
Okay.
Which is unusual for them. Usually they have something. But I think they're just being themselves. And Ryan's additional problem with this, he could maybe figure out how to do it without the Freedom Caucus, and he could maybe bend enough elbows in it to get those votes. He's also got a problem with the defense hawks because they want permanent increased funding in anything that passes next.
Permanent increased fund. Well, in a
they want to break the sequester. They want to break the sequester. On defense, which of course is another thing Democrats will not agree to.
I doubt that, and not really the sort of vehicle you'd want to use for. They'll use anything, but I mean a short-term CR to do anything permanent, particularly something permanent to undo something else that was supposed to be permanent, seems like a bad idea. But that would never occur to them.
No, they want what they want. The other thing it includes is 6 years of CHIP funding, which is kind of dumb. When they've got word from the CBO that you could actually extend CHIP funding for a decade and add $6 billion back. They save $6 billion if they extend CHIP for 10 years, on paper, of course. Because of its interaction with the Obamacare mandate repeal.
Is it that the extension would save the $6 billion? Is that what you mean?
If you go out 10 years rather than 6 years, over time, you get $6 billion back. It costs. It doesn't cost anything to extend it 6 years. If you extend it 10, it not only doesn't cost anything, you get $6 billion back.
All right. And their answer, no, we don't want the $6 billion. That's amazing. And so I guess the question is, how much taxpayer money would you be willing to light on fire, Republicans, in order to be able to say that you denied poor children health care for 4 out of 10 years?
You're right.
And the answer is, I'd pay $6 billion for that. I would absolutely light $6 billion on fire. Now, again, it's not to deny poor children health care for all of those 10 years, which I assume you value at an even higher rate. But just for the minority of the time period we're talking about, 40% of the time period we're talking about, you can deny poor children coverage or make it possible that they would lose their coverage all over again so that you would have to do this problem all over again. What would that be worth to you? $5, $10, $6 billion.
$6 billion.
Okay. That's a very crazy answer. You are terrible, terrible people.
They are terrible, terrible people, made even worse by the fact that they are they're trying to trade off DACA kids for CHIP kids. They're pitting one against the other, trying to get Democrats to support this.
Everybody fight. Okay.
Which means the CHIP kids are still a hostage. They are still a negotiating chip No pun intended.
Okay. Yeah, wow. It's they're taking the worst kinds of hostages, I must say, but that's the most aggressive action they could come up with, I guess. All right, we are about 30 seconds now from our break. We'll just sort of talk our way into that. And you think maybe do we have a roadmap for other things we want to cover in our last segment, or just going to wing it as we usually do? We do a pretty good job of it.
Let's just wing it.
Yeah.
We can go back and talk about the great picture of Jay Cutler that.
Okay.
That's in Sports Illustrated.
We'll do that right after this. Thanks very much. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching Kagro X or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Hey, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. It just occurred to me it must be extraordinarily boring during the break on the other side of the Skype call. There's not even any music to listen to.
And I love the music so much. That needs to be fixed. Oh, and also I was going to say, on the outside, you can hear the Skype call coming in. So
okay. Yeah.
Something else needs to be reset there.
Okay. Well, we'll be working on that somehow. I'm not sure what. We're going to zap the prams. That's the plan. We're not really sure what that means, but we remember how to do it. And sometimes it makes things work inexplicably. It's like turning it off and turning it back on again, basically. Okay, but all seems to be in order. Everybody is awake. They now just have to eat breakfast and get themselves out the door in about 15 minutes. So good news. We're in good shape. Now, as far as Congress goes, that's different.
That's different. I don't think anything's going to get them up and going. I don't think Wheaties would work.
No, but
I put the chances of a shutdown at least 50-50.
Yeah, I would guess so. They do hate having them, but
they hate having them, but
I think they could get out of it if they.
Well, the problem is the Senate, and I don't know how McConnell gets 60 in the Senate. He managed to get 60 yesterday for the bad FISA bill, but that's national security.
Right. Well, that's another issue that is rather amazing. But yeah, I mean, just casually pointing out that they got 60 votes together to get past the filibuster of a bill that's really never a particularly good idea, I don't think. But in Trump's case, worse than ever. And I can at least say fairly honestly that at one point in getting to speak directly to President Obama about anything, this and Guantanamo and detainee policy both came up in the same context. Setting things right in the fashion that you're talking about going about it, this being in 2009, is great as long as you're president or a Democrat you trust is president. The next Republican president, probably not as trustworthy, and I hadn't even contemplate his also being, a mental midget, and that's probably not even a nice thing to say about anything, because, of course, we fall back into old school terminology that insults people that have nothing to do with this. But he's an idiot, and a vindictive idiot at that, and a reactionary, a fool, and a white supremacist, And when I say
who
old school,
wants to send the FBI against people of color and his political enemies, and now has more power to do so.
And that
or
was
will
always
once they pass this.
Yes, and that was always
That's
the
always
threat.
been our fear on these issues. That's always been the problem.
And it was always easy to dismiss if you were the kind of person who approached, these problems by saying, well, Republicans, I know you hate them. I know they're awful. They do it, but they don't really do this sort of thing. And it would take a very special kind of wacko to really literally do that. And
now you've got two of them. You've got Jeff Sessions.
Right.
Yeah.
We were handed that. Now, maybe nobody could have predicted Donald Trump at that point, and nobody even predicted him at the point when he was the nominee. But, on the other hand, I mean, who's a better representative of staid Republican orthodoxy in his day, anyway, than Richard Nixon? And that's the reason we're here. Right. Is, he did do that. Well, now no one would ever do it again because Watergate. Well, but there's a whole cadre of people today who are relitigating Watergate right under your nose, who don't believe the whole thing was correctly decided, and they are the Republican establishment now. God help you if you fall outside of that establishment with someone even more radical later. But, he had 8 years ahead of him and he didn't want to hear it. So,
Republicans after Nixon have always grumbled about the overcorrection from Congress to executive power. They've always been uncomfortable with that. They've always felt it went too far. They've always felt that there shouldn't be that check on the executive. They just had a hard time saying so out loud post Nixon.
Yeah.
Until 9/11.
Yes. And, that was a huge lever for them to really go haywire and to actually just bring back the straight Nixon doctrine of if the president does it, it's not illegal. That's how we got where we are on, the subject we're talking about right now. That's right. Surveillance.
And it looks as though I just saw a tweet go by that McConnell's actually thinking he's going to try to push it today rather than tomorrow for the final vote. This one is so frustrating because all we were asking for is just amendments. Give us some amendments. Give us some actual debate in the Senate. What this bill does is essentially codify the backdoor searches that we know now. Ron Wyden had been hinting at, trying to uncover, warning about for all these years, and that we know happens because of the Snowden revelations, that domestic information is being sucked up into a database, and domestic law enforcement, when it comes through the U.S., when there are U.S. persons involved, it gets sucked up, it gets put in a database, and domestic law enforcement can trawl through that database without a warrant to make a case, to make a criminal case.
Yeah.
That's bad. That is warrantless. That is unconstitutional. And now it's going to be codified.
Well, codifying it doesn't make it constitutional, of course.
No, it does not.
That. We can cling to that, but it's it does help it sometimes pass some of the tests of whether or not the Supreme Court would be willing to deem it unconstitutional, and that's an extraordinary danger.
This Supreme Court?
Yeah, that's true. Including Neil Gorsuch, who by blood is a member of the relitigate Watergate cadre himself. I like to remind everybody. So this guy is born and bred to the case, to the cause of relitigating all of Watergate and the restrictions on government power and on political money as well that ensued post Watergate. The son of one of the original founding members of the band in the Reagan years. That's bad news.
So, Claire McCaskill's the one who allowed that to happen.
Oh.
And I think one of the reasons why McConnell's trying to get this pushed through today, last night was a rather tense vote. It was held open for about an hour and 20 minutes.
Yes, that's right. I did see that happening.
And there was a great deal of conferring with Claire McCaskill, who was the final vote on the floor last night, between Ron Wyden and Pat Leahy and her, and then in turn Warner on the wrong side for a Democrat.
Yeah.
And Cornyn and McConnell, and they flipped her. So when all we were asking for was amendments and actual debate on this, and none of the amendments that, and give Rand Paul credit, he was there too. He argued dishonestly for it on the basis of Obama administration overreach, but nonetheless, Rand Paul was on the right side of this. They had a perfectly viable, fine, national security minded amendment to this bill. That will not be allowed. It's very frustrating.
Yes, because the world's greatest deliberative body doesn't deliberate. That's you get one shot at it at the end.
Yep.
All right. So he may try to get to final vote today. Well, let's see. If they invoked cloture yesterday, are we talking about?
I don't know that he's going to get unanimous consent to do that. I would doubt it. I don't.
Yeah, he might.
Rand Paul's not going to do that to shorten any time he can stand up on the Senate floor and be Rand Paul. So
yes. Oh well. The only way I could see him agreeing to it is if the unanimous consent agreement includes 11 hours for me to speak or something. If that was his plan, if he wanted to do something like that. And somebody else would say, "Oh, I'd like to be in on that too," and Rand Paul would say, "Too late! I already gave my consent. I got my hours." So that's possible, and he may not want to hold things up too long because if they want to get to work on trying to keep the government open, he doesn't want it to happen late on Friday or interrupt his Saturday, perhaps. He needs
more
to go
likely,
home and get beat up by his neighbor, I guess.
Yeah.
Which we never figured out, by the way.
No, I still posit that, probably that many years living next door to Rand Paul, it was inevitable. But
that's the most plausible explanation so far. He's got to go home there every weekend.
Yeah,
that's really weird.
Well, he doesn't have to.
Oh no, and he probably doesn't. He goes around.
Lots of them don't.
Right. Lots of their neighbors haven't seen him in years. I've been waiting to punch you since 2016. He finally came home. Maybe that was it. All right. Let's see. Other than... so the Senate will be dealing with FISA until they can figure that out. Possibly that could carry them into... Let's see. Cloture was last night, so all the way through today into Thursday mid-morning.
Yeah.
At most, and then I assume they would just then go straight to, if there's no amendments, straight to the final passage vote pretty quickly after that, and have Thursday afternoon to jawbone about keeping the government open while they tried to work out a deal that they didn't show anybody until Friday morning, and then roll the dice. Okay. Does that sound
as usual?
Right? Okay.
As usual.
That's usually the case. Any indication what the Senate thinks in terms of the length of the CR?
No. Mostly what I've seen happening in the Senate is continued discussion of DACA and of immigration reform. Oh. Durbin says that, and the Gang of Six is with him, the Gang of Six, they're introducing their plan today.
Okay.
And are pushing McConnell for a vote. Mm-hmm. They are Lindsey Graham, Jeff Flake, Bob Menendez, Michael Bennett, and Cory Gardner.
Okay. And Durbin, I guess?
And Durbin.
Yeah, that's six. Yes. Okay. So pushing for a vote. Okay.
Just a test vote.
Oh, okay.
John Cornyn tweeted out first thing this morning, nope, you're not going to get a test vote because this is just something that POTUS is going to veto anyway. So no test votes, House or Senate. which John Cornyn speaking for the House, they may not necessarily appreciate.
And
but,
the White House.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Okay. If they put it up for a vote in both chambers, chances are pretty good it actually gets veto-proof majorities.
That's a possibility. The other possibility is, I mean, it's funny. You should almost answer it and say, you got no business, obviously, speaking for the House or the White House. But to be honest, you're assuming that the stable genius stays stable long enough to remember what he's said he wanted to do with this bill, and he's never said he was going to veto it. The only thing he's said about it was that he would sign whatever they brought him.
Right.
So we'll take him at his word.
And take the heat for it.
Yeah. I'll play it like the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? Ignore the second missive and just answer the first one.
Right.
He said at the meeting that he'd sign whatever. No, at the meeting he said S-hole. No, we're ignoring that meeting. We're going to talk about the first meeting. The one that was on television that everybody saw. We don't know what he said at the second one. We can't take that into account. We don't have that one on the record. Sorry. You might be right. We might misremember everything he said. He might have said, what I said to you last meeting, still valid. S-hole. Could be it. I don't know. So it's a tactic.
A-hole.
Right. And all the holes. There's only 26 possibilities, and 2 of them right off the bat are troublesome. Any others? Yeah, probably. If you think about it too deeply, I think we probably get ourselves thrown off the air. All right.
Let's just
early in the
move
alphabet. On. Okay. Let's see.
By the way,
quickly? Yes.
We've just got word from Nancy Pelosi. She's whipping Democrats to vote against the short-term government funding measure if it doesn't have immigration. John Yarmouth says no Democrats are going to vote for it. So Ryan really is on his own here.
Yeah, not hard to do that. I would assume now that the Freedom Caucus has said they're not going to vote for it. It's
the Freedom Caucus. Yeah.
But if they're not gonna, if you don't have 100% of the Republicans on board, then there's no reason to put 1% of Democrats on it.
Yeah.
So.
And there's still the Senate.
Right, that place.
And chances are trying to do yet another Obamacare thing, even if none of these things are popular, even if none of these things are things Democrats really care about that much. Just the very fact that they're doing Obamacare again in a CR might be enough to peel them away. I mean, we've even got Doug Jones who went in saying chip, 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 and here's 6 years of chip funding. Even Doug Jones is saying, I really am not thrilled with this. So.
Okay. Well, let's see.
Again, I think we're probably 60-40 shutdown.
Yeah. Oh, so moving. Hey, you're going to move the needle.
Moving the needle.
Okay.
I think it's more like.
Time has passed. Time's running out. Every minute counts. It's going to. What was the thing? Like the New York Times thing that they had. Didn't they have something that is the election prediction thing that actually moved every couple of minutes? Was it maybe even election night that they did it?
Yes, it's a regular election night thing. They do it for all elections.
Oh, really?
And it's mesmerizing.
I guess so. It's
for an elections kind of person. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. What other business might we want to take up in the next few minutes? I'm looking through my own storehouse, but
there's interesting BuzzFeed news on the Russia front that I haven't had a complete chance to read yet. Let me. Funds having gone to Kislyak immediately following the election.
To Kislyak.
That is, I'm sending it to you now.
Okay.
Records exclusively reviewed by BuzzFeed News also show years of Russian financial activity within the U.S. that bankers and federal law enforcement officials deemed suspicious, raising concerns about how the Kremlin's diplomats operated here long before the 2016 election. But this specifically is transactions that went to Sergei Kislyak. 10 days after the 2016 presidential election, which I think was It was over 100,000. 120,000, 10 days after the election of Donald Trump.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to sort through this. Like, what's the deal with sending him money ever, and then after the election, like, is this reimbursement to him for giving other people money to give to Trump? Is that the idea? I don't know.
Yeah.
Sergei Kislyak, by the way, 235 pounds, an amazingly svelte fellow.
Oh yeah, you've got to go. I tweeted out Barb recommending John Aravosa's response to somebody saying, "Why do we have to have a naked picture of Jay Cutler in comparison to Donald Trump?" And most of us are actually fine with that.
Yeah, we didn't have
to.
The
picture is nice.
It was an option. Yeah,
I mean, it's
that
naked
one.
behind, no full front. But it's just, if you have to look at a picture of Donald Trump, then it's nice to have that side by side.
I would say
for some of us.
That seems fair. You know what, though? Honestly, I saw the one. I mean, I guess do they all have that? They have a little, like black redaction rectangle, even though it's a rear view. The one I saw, they put it over his butt, which, quite frankly, makes it look even worse. I think
Sports Illustrated did not.
Okay, there you go. That's leave it alone. Putting the block there makes it seem dirty,
Yeah.
Whereas the other one is like, there he is.
There's just butt cheeks.
And you could get that on TV. I don't see why. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's I think it's an unfair comparison. A lot of, if you're an athlete, you're going to be built differently. But yeah, there's a lot of that going around.
Right. There is a lot of muscle mass there. And that does weigh a lot. So the comparison. But
who cares? So what? Donald
he
Trump
is not 6'3".
Right.
He's not 239 pounds.
No.
It's just all there is to it.
Yes. And I'm upset at the sober journalist community that's like, oh, you people, see, this is as crazy as Pizzagate. No, you know what? It isn't. Take a tape measure and I'll win. Take any tool you want to combat pizza. You're not going to convince those guys. They did it, right? A guy took a gun and shot the place up to prove that it really was a child sex dungeon, and it wasn't. And it never was. Whereas if you just ask Trump to stand still and take out a tape measure and measure the guy. There's no national security implications to what you're asking. I don't need a gun. Stand there, I'll measure you. And there's biometric, identification crap out there that can tell us in an instant what he weighs and how tall he is based on, the mathematics set up in any photograph of him that's in the public domain. You can find that out. But instead, you're a Pizzagator. You're a birther. You know what? I'm not saying it's incredible and needs to be on the front page, like emails for a year or anything. Just saying the guy's lying to you. You know he's lying to you when he says he's not golfing, right? You don't say he's lying. You just say he's really golfing. Well, then just say he's really 6'1", 260. That's, and sorry that he said that, and it's not Ronnie Jackson's fault that he was asked to say that. I think the deal they set up was self-report your height and weight if you want to, and I'll read that. The important part for me is I give you a cardiology exam. That I won't lie about. Okay, fine. Deal done. Oh, and then Trump says, I got to have a mental acuity exam. Give me the kindergarten one here. I don't know if you saw those pictures.
I saw the pictures, yes.
I like it. The naming section is my favorite. Name, what are these pictures of?
These trophy animals.
There's a lion, a rhinoceros, a rhino, and a camel.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So if you can identify a lion, a rhino, and a camel.
And tell me who's president.
Yes. All right. That's easy enough. You get to have the nuclear button. That's it. That's all you have to do. Although I like that they called it naming, and I wondered whether he tried to give them names. Like, this is Donald the lion, and Mitt the rhino, and Saddam the camel. There you go. This is no. I mean, what are they? The animals that they're. Oh, I see. Let's see. My sons have shot these two.
Right. Those are hanging on the walls.
This one at a circus. Yeah. So it's easy enough for him to do. Well, that was a bad deal, but We'll have to dive into that. I do wish the journalist community would get its. Honestly, the one that looks crazy in that exchange is the one who's insisting that the obviously heavier and obviously shorter guy, who is so vain that he lies about this the way he lies about his golfing, is actually wrong, and it doesn't mean a great deal. It's crazier to stand there insisting that's Pizzagate-ish or birther-ish. But because they write and say both sides about things, they figure they're right. I'm annoyed, personally. Okay. Sorry.
Anyway.
Yeah, I didn't.
Anyway, back to Kislyak.
Right.
Who's also 239 pounds.
Right. Well, whatever he wants.
Suspicious payments to the U.S. Embassy. And then 5 days after Trump's inauguration, someone attempted to withdraw $150,000 cash from the embassy's account. Interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. I would like to dive into that one. Well, I think we'll have to read that off air and digest it.
Yeah.
You'll no doubt see that at Daily Kos at some point.
Yes, he will. Sumner's working on that one now.
Oh, okay.
There was another thing I was going to highlight, if I can remember. Oh, it's Michael Wolff.
Oh.
I don't know if you saw this one. Bloomberg, and I'm not sure how Bloomberg found it, but they've discovered how Michael Wolff got a front row seat to the Donald Trump White House.
I did see that. Yes, tell me.
They invited him in.
Yeah.
He went on CNN. He complained about CNN's coverage of Trump. Hope Hicks called him up and said, well, thank you for doing that. Why don't you come on by? Actually, Trump called.
Trump. Wow.
Yeah. And the pair harmonized, this is Mark, I'm reading, harmonized in whining about CNN's treatment of Trump. Wolff, recognizing an opportunity, immediately made his pitch to do an Inside the Trump White House book. And there he was.
Excellent. I would love to pair that up with the immediate response from the White House from a couple of days ago. We don't know him. A book. I never heard of it. He's nobody. I didn't give him permission. Yes, I did. So put that side by side and then tell me he's 239 and I'm the idiot. That's okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I've man-babbled all over you today. Ugh. I appreciate your putting up with it. I don't know. I was disturbed this morning. My fault. It's not nice being lied to. Yes. It's disturbing.
And so blatantly lied to. I mean, you can look at the guy. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Sanjay Gupta says, yeah, this guy has heart disease. What you're not hearing from the doctor. Oh. When he rattled off all of those numbers and all of the tests that they did, he's got heart disease. Period. So.
Well, he's a crazy
Sanjay
conspiracy.
Gupta's a doctor.
Right. Not a crazy conspiracy theorist.
Not a crazy conspiracy theorist. The medications he's on, the tests that they did, the numbers they gave for his cholesterol, it all adds up.
Yeah. I mean,
by the way, what doctor guarantees you 7 years of healthy life?
That's pretty Trumpy, to be honest. Yeah. Nobody can do that. Nobody ever should do that. I mean, do we get our money back if he drops dead or anything? I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm glad you share the sentiment so that you weren't too hopefully put out by my completely losing my mind and getting distracted and jipping you out of a decent part of your segment today. But maybe I'll make it up to you. You can come back next week and
well, it's not like we have anything new to talk about. There is one thing new to talk about. There are now 50 votes for the CRA to restore net neutrality.
Oh, yes. That's right.
When it's going to happen, we don't know. The FCC has to go to OMB. They've got to get the rule approved with OMB, which Mick Mulvaney's going to just rubber stamp it. And then it has to be put in the Federal Register, and once it's published in the Federal Register, the clock starts counting down for the Senate to work on it.
Okay.
It's 60 Senate working days, so, we're talking 3-4 months away if the SEC and OMB work fast. So, but anyway, there are 50 votes.
That is good news.
We've got months to get the 51st.
Excellent. And I don't think there's any chance of losing any of the 50 along the way, unless, of course, some of them weigh 239 pounds, if possible.
The only one would be Susan Collins,
okay.
But, she has a lot to make up for here. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is a good update, and we can check back on that. It'll take us a while to get around to that vote, of course, but hopefully you'll be back next week. I haven't offended you in any way. And thanks for putting up with it and joining us again, as usual, Joan McCarter.
Happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. Take care, and we'll talk next week. Time now for me to hand the microphones over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Plenty on tap for you today. Of course, I talked my way out of being able to explain most of it to you, but do stay tuned. It's always tasty.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
The FBI is in the mix. I can pull that one straight out of this thread. FBI staffers fear that the GOP's witch hunt against the agency will compromise sources and get assets killed. And ICE is planning a massive Northern California immigration sweep to strike against the state's sanctuary laws. All that and more coming up next.